What if that messy room you've been judging yourself for isn't a sign of laziness at all? What if the clutter around you is actually revealing something important about your mental state? Because psychology suggests that a messy home is often not a cleaning problem. It's a stress problem, an exhaustion problem, sometimes even a silent cry for help from a mind that's carrying more than it can handle. And once you understand what's really happening, you may never look at clutter the same way again. Take a look around you for a moment. Is there a pile of clothes that's been sitting in the same spot for weeks? A drawer that refuses to close because it's packed with things you keep meaning to organize? A corner of your room that's slowly turned into a storage area for "I'll deal with it later"? Most people see these things and immediately jump to one conclusion: I need to be more disciplined. But psychology tells a different story. A messy home is rarely just about being lazy, careless, or irresponsible. More often, it's a reflection of what's happening inside the mind. Because there is a kind of exhaustion that sleep cannot fix. You can spend 8 hours in bed and still wake up feeling mentally drained. Simple tasks feel heavier than they should. Making decisions feels harder. Even small responsibilities start feeling overwhelming. And in that state, cleaning your room doesn't feel like a simple chore. It feels like climbing a mountain. So the dishes stay in the sink. The laundry keeps growing. The clutter slowly spreads. And with every passing day, the mess begins to affect you in ways you may not even notice. Here's what many people misunderstand. When they see a messy room, they see a lack of effort. What they should be seeing is a signal that the brain may be under stress. Researchers have found that people who describe their homes as cluttered often report higher levels of stress and emotional overwhelm. In other words, clutter isn't just something you see, it's something you feel. Your brain is constantly processing your environment. Every unfinished task, every overflowing drawer, every pile waiting to be sorted. They quietly compete for your attention, even when you're not consciously thinking about them. That's why clutter can feel mentally exhausting. It's like having dozens of browser tabs open in your mind at the same time, each one demanding a little bit of energy, a little bit of attention, and a little bit of mental space. And over time, that pressure adds up. But here's where things become even more interesting. Have you ever started cleaning one thing and somehow ended up distracted by 5 others? You pick up a jacket, then notice a book. You carry the book to another room, then spot an empty glass. You take the glass to the kitchen, then see something else that needs attention. And suddenly 20 minutes have passed, but the original task isn't finished. Many people blame themselves for this, but psychology offers another explanation. It's often connected to something called executive functioning. These are the mental processes that help us plan, organize, focus, and complete tasks. When stress, anxiety, burnout, or emotional overload begin affecting these systems, even simple chores can feel surprisingly difficult. Not because the task itself is hard, but because your brain is already carrying too much. Imagine trying to run 10 apps on a phone with only 5% battery. Eventually, everything slows down. Not because the phone is broken, because it's overloaded. The human brain works in a similar way, and for many people, depression can make this even harder. One of the biggest misconceptions about depression is that it always looks obvious. People often imagine constant sadness or visible emotional pain, but sometimes depression looks much quieter than that. Sometimes it looks like unopened mail, a bedroom floor covered with clothes, a sink full of dishes, or a growing list of tasks that feel impossible to start. Depression often drains motivation, energy, and focus. Things that once took 5 minutes can suddenly feel overwhelming, and then a painful cycle begins. The mess increases. The mess creates guilt. The guilt drains even more energy, and the cycle repeats itself. Many people spend years trapped inside that loop, believing they're failing, when in reality, they're struggling. And those are not the same thing. But here's the part that often gets overlooked. Cleaning can be surprisingly powerful for mental health. Not because having a spotless home makes you a better person, and not because your worth depends on how organized your space is. It doesn't. What matters is that creating even a small amount of order can give your brain something incredibly important: a sense of control. When life feels chaotic, completing a simple task sends a message to your nervous system. I can influence my environment. I can make progress. I am not powerless. And sometimes that small victory is exactly what the brain needs. That's why waiting until you feel motivated can be a mistake. Motivation often comes after action, not before it. So don't focus on cleaning the entire house. Focus on one surface, one shelf, one corner, one small win. Because progress doesn't begin when everything is perfect. It begins when you take the first step, no matter how small it seems. So the next time you look at a messy room, try not to see it as proof that you failed. Instead, see it as information, a clue, a message worth paying attention to. Because the mess didn't appear overnight. And it doesn't need to disappear overnight either. What matters is not perfection, what matters is movement. One small action, one small improvement, one decision to care for yourself today. Because sometimes cleaning a room isn't really about cleaning a room. Sometimes it's about reminding yourself that you still deserve peace, support, and a space that helps you breathe a little easier. If you enjoyed this psychological insight, subscribe for more fascinating truths about how the mind quietly shapes the way we live every day.